and Paul Gascoigne, two guys
Yeah.
Did you see Merson on Harry's Heroes recently?
I did,
you?
yeah, I did, yeah. I know. Obviously, Merce had his issues at Arsenal before he came to Middlesbrough. Obviously, we were fully aware of obviously his own personal problems and things, but those aside, as a footballer, absolute genius. Just absolute genius. His ability as a footballer, never in question. That how far and how much more he could have achieved in the game if he didn't have those kind of issues. It could have been really scary, really. Because, and same as Gaza, what I mean, same thing. And I think it was such a sad thing to say, but it's, in this generation and this lifestyle that the players have now. Imagine how much more we could have got out of a Paul Merson or a Paul Gascoigne, because those two ability alone were just out of this world. And but back then there was no social media, no phones to get people into trouble, to keep them out the pub and keep them on the straight and narrow, unfortunately. And you know what I mean. And yeah, back then it was the social side, and the things that I sampled, the social side, were absolutely fantastic, because you grow up from a young lad into a man very quickly, but and the memories you have and the laughs you have are great. But it can have a negative impact on your career at times, because it's not a healthy way of a lifestyle, unfortunately. But it was a fun time to be around those kind of players, though.
I can imagine. I was going to lead on to the point of a lot of the trouble that Merson's had that was mentioned in Harry's Heroes was the retiring from football, and how that just when you hang up your boots, it's a very difficult process. And we've asked a few of our guests about this. What's your take on it? Because from talking to you now, Andy, you seem like you've adapted to it like a duck to water, and you seem quite calm and settled with it.
Well, I wasn't. I'll be honest. I'm not sure that the football authorities do enough. I'll be honest. I really struggled when I came out the game. I came out the game around 32, 33, and I was lost. I was so lost for so many days, and what I mean. I had so many bad thoughts, so many bad things, because one minute you're classed as a professional footballer, you're classed as high regard, and you're earning money, and then the next minute you're a nothing, a nobody, so to speak, and not earning a penny. And I found that as a real struggle, because I didn't know where to look. I didn't know what my options were. Nobody had ever sat down with me and told me what my future held. You know what I mean? I think everybody thinks that you're going to play football and it's going to last forever, that you're going to earn enough money that you don't have to ever work again. And unfortunately, that's not the case. You know what I mean? That you play football in a generation that money didn't grow on trees at the time when I played. You know what I mean? Yes, we were well paid, but you obviously lifestyle. You had a lifestyle to go with that. And I mean, when I came out the game, I was lost for probably 6 months to a year, and then all of a sudden I got thrown into a conversation with the PFA, Andy Barlow and Richard Jobson in particular, ex Oldham and ex Man City players, and I think if it wasn't for those two, I'm not sure where my future would have been, and you know what I mean, because those two had a massive impact on the way that I then looked at my future and things, because I left football. I joined football, with no qualifications. I left school with nothing, because my only dream and my only aspiration was to go and play football. So they told me to go and do my GCSEs. So I went and did my GCSEs. I did a night class, a 33-year-old with quite a older clientele as well. So I was in a similar boat. But then they told me to go to university, which I went with 18, 19, 20-year-olds like you do, and a 33, 34-year-old, 35-year-old person doing a three-year degree, the sports science degree, and I didn't do all the socialising what all those youngsters did, but I was there to do a job, and I think my football and my professionalism stuck me into a routine of work 9 to 5, do all my work, get it all done. I can enjoy my weekends with my family and my kids, and then go back to it on the Monday and get my course done, and then look for what I want to do, because you know what I mean. I knew that I was going to have to work, but I was lucky enough that I was able to do a course and get a qualification behind me. But I'll be honest, if it wasn't for the PFA and somehow falling onto that, I just wish it had happened probably a year earlier, because I do feel as though I'd lost a year, and some of the thoughts that I was having were really not very nice thoughts, and obviously I was just very, very lost, and lost all my confidence a little bit. That, you know what I mean, that I just didn't know where my life was going to go. And you know what I mean, thankfully that I'm now a teacher in primary school, and you know what I mean, and I couldn't have done that with loads of help and support, really, because you know what I mean, I think as a player, I think you're in this bubble where I think you think it's going to last forever, and I think you believe you're going to stay in football for the rest of your life, and sometimes you decide not to because you fall out of love with football. But I don't think that was the case for me. I was just, I think sometimes you didn't get an opportunity to progress on to be a coach or a manager or things at the time. That it's just sometimes you go down a different avenue then to come back into football or talk about football and then to do stuff. So it's, you know what I mean, it's, you know, I love what I'm doing now. You know what I mean, love the job I do and love talking about football. So it's, you know what I mean, I'm so passionate about football that I love talking about all football, current football, professional football, semi-professional football, players. It's just so nice to be able to do something that I love.
That's firstly, thank you very much for sharing that with us. That's great. Secondly, I tip my hat to you because that's a hell of an achievement. And you said it like it was nonchalant, but fair play to you, mate. Take some credit for that one. And thirdly, what do you think the PFA could do better then for younger players? Obviously, younger players are earning a lot more money now, so that, and I believe a lot of clubs give them financial advisors. But from your point of view, what do you think a positive change would be?
Well, this isn't me slagging the PFA off. I just think maybe a company run by ex-players could be set up to help and go into clubs, apprentices, maybe as young pros, maybe as experienced pros, or sit down with people who are interested in a conversation of what happens when you do leave. You know what I mean? Because nobody knows that feeling of leaving professional football until you've done it. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people have done it, but they've all got a different story. And I think the success stories are brilliant. Don't get me wrong, they're absolutely fantastic. But I think people need to hear a range of stories of good and bad, because it affects people in different ways. And if it could be an injury, it could be a bit of luck, it could be not getting a contract, it could be it could be an agent, it could be anything, a whole host of reasons why you don't stay in football. But I think you need to be ready for that moment, because money also doesn't last forever, because you live in a lifestyle. Even if you're getting paid £100,000 a week, your lifestyle is probably used to that kind of world. And you know what I mean, then you're draining into that money every week, every month, and you're going on these flash holidays, buying all these flash cars, you know, still living that kind of lifestyle. And then all of a sudden, one day it will drain. And if that's not carefully managed by yourself, by somebody else, or invested in certain things, and you know what I mean, or something else is added onto it, then it's going to have an impact on kids, grandkids, and future generations. And you know what I mean, unfortunately, I think somebody's got a duty of care. You know what I mean, because I don't always think that clubs do that, because clubs are quite selfish. Clubs are in it for themselves, because it's very rare that a player will start at a club and finish at the same club. So, and they'll probably work for that club for the rest of their life, because you've got that affiliation. But once you leave a club, you know what I mean, that sometimes you disregard them, they disregard you. So it's, you know what I mean, sometimes a duty of care has got to be done by somebody, and I'm just not sure who that's with. And hopefully somebody can just go on in and just casually talk to people. You know, that I'm doing a talk tomorrow with some young scholars over I think it's over Zoom, and like a webinar, sort of just to telling people about that transition and the transition I just spoke about. And hopefully, if those kids don't make it to professional football and they need to fall back on something, that they know that there is an avenue for them. It's not all, they're not lost. They're not their life's not over. You know what I mean? There's another life without football, and until someone shows you it or pushes you down that alley, that you never know. You know what I mean? But I'll tell you about. But yeah, I think I'd just like somebody. You know what I mean? I'd love to do it. I'd love to go into clubs and talk to people about it, because you know what I mean. It's not all doom and gloom as well. By the way, you know what I mean. It could have ended differently for me. You know what I mean. You listen to Lee Hendry's story, and
heartbreaking.
You know that, yeah, it is, and it's not nice. But there's, you know what I mean. These are real life events and real life stories, because because also you see the good stories and the positive stories, but you also need to hear the not so nice things as well, because it's real life, and football's real life. It's not a soap. It's not lived out for you. You've got to live it yourself.
I always say this about footballers. I'm fortunate enough that in this job I get to meet a lot of you former players. And the one thing that always strikes me when people say like, "Oh, what's it like meeting so and so? What's it like meeting so and so?" I say all footballers have predominantly the same story: young lad, working class, decent at football, got a bit of luck, got signed up, and it's essentially the same as the people that are sat in the crowds watching it, all just working class lads that love football. You guys are the ones that made it that way. So yeah, when you come out at 42 and that's all you've done, it's got to be heart-wrenching. I'm very interested in how you got into this this seminar that you're doing, actually, because that sounds like a really positive thing that more people can benefit from.
It was just I got messaged by a friend of mine who's taken over a youth academy, and he wants his players to sample conversations with current players. I think George Friend was on last week from Middlesbrough, left back, their captain, and he just wants a different view on how I see professional football now. My journey as a player, my journey out of football, my journey in from football, and everyone's got a different story to tell, and that's just the joy of it. I know the guests that we've had on our podcast that I sometimes sit there and sometimes I just look at my screen and I can be sitting there with my mouth open because I'm just so enthralled in what they're saying, because I didn't know half the stuff what they're saying, and they were my teammates, some of them, and I'm just thinking, I never knew that about you. You know what I mean? So how's anyone else going to know it? Because footballers are very private. And I think sometimes it only takes, and sometimes the story never comes out until sometimes it's too late. I lost a good friend of mine and an ex-teammate of mine, Chris Barker, who committed suicide this year. And and I think sometimes, well, certainly for me, I think the story that I tell now probably kept a little bit to myself, because I think I was thought it was very private. But I think if it helps somebody, I think it can't do any harm, because I'm not embarrassed of it. Certainly that's one thing that I will say to anybody, because I would never portray myself to be a good footballer. I worked harder than a lot of people did, because I knew I didn't have the skills and the ability what people had. I had something that I knew nobody had, and the pace what I had frightened the life and the death out of everybody, and that I used that to my advantage. And but I knew when it came to the fitness side, the long distance running, I was always at the back. I was always getting abused by the manager. That I wasn't fit enough, but I just wasn't built like that. And I wasn't the strongest. So I was always getting pushed off the ball. But a ball over the top, I would beat anybody in a race. People say about players now. Michael Owens, the Cristiano Ronaldo's. The Adama Traore's. I would have backed myself when I played to beat anybody in a leg race. And even still now, part of me when I do play for the over 40s, that I think I'm quick, but I'm not. I've lost it. I'm a little bit quicker than some people, but I just love football that much that I just think sometimes I forget where I am. But you put your boots on, you forget. But it's it's such a talking point, and if I can help certain people, young people, older people, that transition in football, out of football, and help them on a different journey, or give them advice or something. I say my messages are always open on social media, and I say that, and I say it in my podcast, because it's, and that's people who aren't in football as well, because everyone has bad thoughts, and especially at the time we're in now, that it's such a surreal moment in life that we all have our days, hours, weeks that we just don't know what to do with ourselves. But hopefully sometimes a text or a message or just a wish to cheer or cheer somebody up can go 1,000 miles sometimes.
I think you're absolutely right. There's a wonderful movement in the world that I credit to Frank Bruno starting, that men's mental health is no longer a stigma to what it was 25, 30 years ago. The men are actually now able to talk about it, which I think is a fantastic thing, and people should never be frightened of doing it. And if you save one person's life, or you make one person start the conversation rolling, then you've done a good job. And again, credit to you, because you sound like you've got all your ducks in a row.